Israel's war has taken a dramatic turn. The focus has shifted north to the border with Lebanon. This strategic shift follows a series of events that have escalated tensions in the region. The conflict, which initially erupted with Hamas's incursion into Israel, has now expanded, engulfing a new front and raising fears of a wider conflagration. The Lebanese border, once relatively quiet, has become a flashpoint. Israel Defense Forces, IDF, have launched strikes against targets associated with Hezbollah, the Iran-backed militant group based in Lebanon. Hezbollah, in turn, has fired rockets into Israel, marking a dangerous escalation in the conflict. This new front in the war presents a significant challenge for Israel. It adds another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. With the fighting now spread across multiple fronts, Israel faces the daunting task of containing the conflict and preventing it from spiraling out of control. Israel's Security Cabinet made the pivotal decision to open the Lebanon front. This decision, made after days of intense deliberation, reflects the gravity of the situation. It signals a willingness to expand the conflict in pursuit of what Israel perceives as its security interests. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation, justifying the decision. He emphasized the threat posed by Hezbollah, labeling it an Iranian proxy determined to harm Israel. Netanyahu vowed to protect Israeli citizens, even if it meant taking the fight to enemy territory. The cabinet's decision carries significant risks. Opening a new front could lead to a wider war, drawing in regional actors and further destabilizing the region. It also risks alienating international allies and undermining diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. However, the cabinet clearly believes that the potential benefits outweigh the risks. By striking Hezbollah, Israel aims to degrade its capabilities and deter future attacks. The move is also intended to send a strong message to Iran, Hezbollah's patron, that Israel will not tolerate threats to its security. The conflict has triggered a mass exodus of civilians. In northern Israel, residents near the Lebanon border have fled their homes. Fearing rocket attacks, they sought refuge in bomb shelters and safer areas. The UN estimates over 1 million people displaced in Lebanon. Most are Palestinian refugees in camps targeted by airstrikes. The displacement has created a humanitarian crisis with urgent needs. The human cost of this conflict is stark. The situation underscores the urgent need for a ceasefire and political solution. Northern Israel, once a haven of tranquility, is now on edge. The constant threat of rocket fire has disrupted daily life, instilling fear and uncertainty among its residents. The region's officials and residents are vocal in their demands for decisive action. They argue that the government must prioritize their security and eliminate the threat from Hezbollah. They call for a full-scale military operation to dismantle Hezbollah's infrastructure and capabilities. The pressure on the government to act decisively is mounting. The government faces a difficult balancing act. It must weigh the demands of its citizens for security against the risks of escalating the conflict. A full-scale invasion of Lebanon would be a risky and costly endeavor, with no guarantee of success. The voices from the north highlight the domestic pressures facing Netanyahu. He is caught between the need to project strength and the desire to avoid a wider war. His handling of the situation will have significant implications for his political future. Section 5. Netanyahu's Gamble, political survival at stake. For Netanyahu, the decision to open the Lebanon front is as much political as it is strategic. Facing mounting domestic pressure and a potential challenge to his leadership, he has chosen to gamble on a high-stakes confrontation with Hezbollah. The move is a calculated risk aimed at rallying public support and diverting attention from his legal troubles. By projecting an image of strength and decisiveness, Netanyahu hopes to solidify his hold on power. However, the gamble could backfire. A prolonged conflict with Hezbollah, with the potential for heavy casualties, could erode public support. Failure to deliver a decisive victory could further damage his standing. Netanyahu's political survival may hinge on the outcome of this conflict. His ability to navigate the complexities of the situation, both militarily and diplomatically, will be crucial in determining his political fate. Section 6. Hezbollahs Calculus, a delicate balancing act. Hezbollah, too, faces a delicate balancing act. The group is caught between its desire to support Hamas and its need to avoid a full-scale war with Israel. Its actions thus far suggest a strategy of calibrated escalation. Hezbollah has responded to Israeli strikes with rocket fire, demonstrating its capabilities and resolve. However, it has refrained from launching a massive attack, suggesting a desire to avoid a wider conflict. Hezbollahs Calculus is influenced by a number of factors, including its own military capabilities, the level of Iranian support, and the potential consequences of a full-scale war. The group will likely continue to calibrate its response based on Israeli actions. Hezbollah's actions in the coming days and weeks will be crucial in determining the trajectory of the conflict. Its ability to exercise restraint while still demonstrating its commitment to the Palestinian cause will be tested. Section 7. International Implications, a region on edge. The conflict has sent shockwaves throughout the region and beyond. The international community is watching with growing concern, fearing a wider conflagration that could engulf the entire Middle East. The United States, Israel's closest ally, has expressed unwavering support for Israel's right to defend itself. However, it has also urged restraint, emphasizing the need to avoid civilian casualties and prevent the conflict from escalating. European countries have called for a ceasefire and a return to negotiations. They have also expressed concern about the humanitarian situation, particularly in Gaza, where the civilian population is bearing the brunt of the conflict. The conflict has also exacerbated tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia, the two regional powers vying for influence in the Middle East. The risk of the conflict spilling over into a regional war remains a real and present danger. Section 8. The Humanitarian Cost, a shared burden. The human cost of this conflict is immeasurable. Innocent civilians are bearing the brunt of the violence. Homes destroyed, families torn apart, lives lost. In Israel, the threat of rocket fire affects mental well-being. The trauma of war will have a lasting impact on children. In Lebanon, the situation is dire. The conflict exacerbates Lebanon's economic crisis. Displacement has created a humanitarian catastrophe. The international community must provide aid. A political solution is urgently needed to end the violence. Section 9. Seeking a path forward, between retaliation and restraint. As the conflict rages on, the search for a path forward remains elusive. Both sides seem locked in a cycle of retaliation and counter-retaliation, with no end in sight. The international community is urging restraint and calling for a ceasefire. However, these calls have fallen on deaf ears, as both sides remain determined to achieve their military objectives. The situation is further complicated by the deep mistrust between the parties. Years of conflict and failed negotiations have created a climate of suspicion and hostility, making it difficult to find common ground. Despite the challenges, the search for a peaceful resolution must continue. The alternative is a protracted conflict that will only bring more suffering and instability to the region. Section 10. The Long Shadow of Conflict, a Legacy of Displacement and Trauma. The current conflict is but the latest chapter in a long and bloody conflict that has plagued the region for decades. It is a conflict marked by violence, displacement, and trauma, leaving an indelible mark on the lives of generations. The Palestinian people, in particular, have borne the brunt of this conflict. Displaced from their homes and deprived of their basic rights, they have endured decades of hardship and suffering. The conflict has also had a profound impact on Israeli society. The constant threat of violence has created a culture of fear and insecurity, while the occupation of Palestinian territories has raised troubling questions about Israel's identity and values. The legacy of this conflict is one of pain, loss, and mistrust. It is a legacy that continues to cast a long shadow over the region, hindering efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace. Section 11. The Uncertain Future, Towards a Fragile Peace. As the conflict enters its third week, the future remains uncertain. The fighting continues unabated, with no end in sight. The hopes for a quick resolution have faded, replaced by the grim reality of a protracted conflict. The international community is struggling to find a way to break the cycle of violence. Diplomatic efforts have so far failed to produce a breakthrough, and the prospects for a negotiated settlement seem dim. The situation is complex and multifaceted, with no easy solutions. The root causes of the conflict, including the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Syrian civil war, and the rise of extremist groups, remain unaddressed. Despite the challenges, the pursuit of peace must continue. The alternative is a descent into chaos and violence with devastating consequences for the entire region. the international community must remain engaged, working tirelessly to find a path towards a just and lasting peace, however fragile it may seem.